You're probably familiar with the idea of a pacemaker, an electrical device that helps a human heart keep time. But increasingly, people with brain disorders like Parkinson's or depression are getting help from a similar technology. Deep brain stimulation implants electrodes in affected parts of the brain to help neurons work better. We visited the Cleveland Clinic to find out how it works.
Meet Stephen Gooley. He's a technical writer for Apple and an avid cyclist. But just a few years ago, the simple act of walking across the street was a struggle. That's because Stephen suffers from Parkinson's disease, and his body was racked with tremors like these.
I'd walk stooped over. I couldn't ride a bicycle. I couldn't type. You wouldn't want to watch me eat in a restaurant.
Parkinson's originates in the subthalamic nucleus section of the brain. An area about the size of a pea, it's associated with steady muscle control. Parkinson's is normally caused by a lack of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that keeps the brain's electric circuits flowing smoothly. Without dopamine, the brain can produce abnormal electrical signals, which affects the body's central nervous system. Because his normal medication was failing to control his tremors, Stephen became a candidate for a complex medical procedure that promised to control his quakes and give him back his life. There was just one catch. He'd have to have electrodes implanted deep inside his brain.
I have a computer that constantly sends impulses into my brain to keep me functional. I'm a cyborg.
Even with the tremors growing worse, the thought of brain implants was not exactly appealing.
You know, initially I have to say that the idea of having wires put into your brain seemed like a really bad idea. It seemed like a bad idea on steroids, like they ought to emblazon it in capital letters with bad idea and just, walk away from it.
But there he was at Stanford University Hospital, having what's known as deep brain stimulation surgery.
This has been a complete miracle. I could move, I could tap my fingers. I was really very, very happy. In fact, I had the surgeons worried because I was so happy they were afraid they had affected me, put the probe in the wrong place, and made me euphoric.
The surgery hasn't cured Stephen's Parkinson's, but it's helped him manage his symptoms, and his quality of life is dramatically better.
I've got a pacemaker implanted under my collarbone, which has a small computer in it. It communicates through wires that run under my scalp, goes up to a pair of plastic caps in my skull, wires that go right down through my brain into my subthalamic nucleus, and it's feeding a constant stimulus of impulses to my subthalamic nucleus to quiet those electrical storms that are caused by Parkinson's.
Far away from Stephen Gooley's California home, in rural Cardington, Ohio, farmer Morris Porter prepares for deep brain stimulation.
It's the first tractor I ever bought. It's still worth more today than what it was the day I bought it.
He's about to join the 40,000 people worldwide living with brain implants.
I do a lot of mechanic work, carpenter work and stuff like that, working on farm equipment.
About 7 years ago, Morris Porter was diagnosed with a genetic movement disorder known as essential tremor. It shares many of the same crippling symptoms as Parkinson's disease. Morris's hands and arms shake uncontrollably.
My right hand was where it really started. It sat there and shake. Sometimes I can settle it down and, it's not really too bad sometimes. But then sometimes it's really lousy.
Every month, Morris becomes more disabled. For most of his life, he's worked with his hands, and now, managing the farm has become almost impossible.
Finally, it got to the point that he can barely do anything as far as mechanic or woodworking. It made me feel sorry for him.
The shaking makes eating and drinking so messy, he's embarrassed to visit the town's diner. So, at the age of 69, Morris Porter decided to make a 100-mile trip to the Cleveland Clinic and get himself wired. It's not an easy decision. Poking around in the brain can be dangerous. There are all kinds of potential side effects, even the possibility of stroke or hemorrhage.
Well, you take my hands, you take my life. And I'm going to fight to keep them as long as I can.
Outside the operating room, Morris takes one more look at his tremor.
Won't miss it, a darn bit.
But Judy Porter worries. See, no one knows exactly why deep brain stimulation works.
So, be glad when it's over.
Morris has been prepped for the surgery by having a stereotactic head frame bolted to his skull. Even with the new headgear, he's still in good spirits.
Do you have any questions to me?
How fast we gonna be going now?
That's good, good.
Don't hurt a bit.
Before the surgery begins, the doctors ask Morris to draw a spiral on a sheet of paper. This will serve as a baseline to show the extent of his tremors before they start the mapping probe.
So today we're going to implant a pacemaker in the brain, in the part of the brain that generates the tremor. Right now, he's in this stereotactic head frame, and this is a device that allows us to target anywhere in the brain.
At the beginning, Morris is sedated. He'll need to be awake for most of the procedure, but first Dr. Rezai has to drill an opening in his skull. Dr. Rezai will insert this mapping probe in Morris's brain. It'll help find the exact location of the abnormal signals in the subthalamic nucleus.
The tip of this is going to record individual neuronal activity as the neurons are talking to each other, so we can eavesdrop on the neurons. And that's what tells us where we are in the brain.
It's like having a tiny microphone on the tip of the probe. As it moves through the folds of the brain, the doctors can hear the electrical firing of individual neurons. It sounds like static, but the doctors can use the noise to navigate.
As we go from one structure to the other, you can hear the sounds of different parts of the brain. So it's like traveling from one country to another. Each country speaks different language.
Each spike on the monitor is the firing of a single cell in the brain, a neuron. MRI images give the doctors more navigation aids. The computer has marked the path the probe should take. Being off by only a millimeter could be disastrous.
You hear that? That's your rest area in the brain. If we were a little bit too far to the middle of the brain, it would be affecting his face area. If we were too far to the side, it would be affecting his leg area. So that's the kind of feedback we need from the patient to help further fine-tune our mapping and to know exactly where to put the final pacemaker device.
After 3 hours, the mapping probe identifies the exact spot that triggers Morris's tremor.
Okay, we're ready to implant.
Morris, let me know if you have any tingling.
The implant itself is a coiled wire about a millimeter thick. It's insulated in polyurethane because it will remain in the brain. 4 platinum iridium electrodes are embedded on the tip. The robotic drive places the electrodes at the precise spot identified in the mapping process.
Pull it up like that.
Get it close to your mouth.
With the implant in place, the doctors do one more baseline measurement of Morris's tremor. He holds a cup to his lips. Then, it's the moment of truth. Time to switch on the pacemaker, which controls the stimulation.
Okay, everybody keep quiet, please, while we just talk to the patient.
Morris, you all ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Went up to 1 volt here. Any tingling there?
02.
I don't feel it.
Okay, let's try to grab that cup, Morris.
There you go, Morris. Take it to your mouth. That's better. How's that? Where's your tremor?
It's low. Yeah.
Good.
Morris's hand is under control. His tremor is gone. Stimulation from the electrodes in his brain has masked the disorder.
The result was excellent. He got nearly 100% control of his tremor, and you saw, and he was very impressed when he turned on the pacemaker during the testing, the tremor arrested completely.
Another spiral drawing illustrates the movement.
You want to get some comments, Doctor?
Ain't nobody happier than I am. I tell you that.
Because Stephen Gooley has experienced DBS himself, we asked him what's ahead for the farmer from Ohio.
It's quite an improvement. Morris, you're in for a good ride. You're not going to be quite the mechanic you were before you developed essential tremor. You're going to bark your knuckles on the radiator housing like a young man. You're going to drop screws the way you didn't before, but you're going to be able to get the job done and continue with your life again. This has been a complete miracle. It's been a second chance at life. F. Scott Fitzgerald said there are no second acts in American life. He was wrong.